The story of Ruth is one of the most beautiful and meaningful narratives in the Bible, found in the Book of Ruth. It is a short book with only 4 chapters, yet it carries deep lessons about faithfulness, sacrifice, kindness, and God's quiet work through ordinary people. Unlike many Bible stories that focus on kings, prophets, or miracles, Ruth's story centers on everyday life, family relationships, loss, work, love, and hope. Ruth's story takes place during the time of the Judges, a period in Israel's history marked by instability, moral confusion, and repeated cycles of disobedience. In the middle of this dark and chaotic era, the story of Ruth shines as a reminder that God continues to work through faithful individuals, even when society is broken. At its heart, the story of Ruth is about a foreign woman, a widow, who chooses loyalty over comfort, faith over fear, and love over self. Through her obedience and character, she becomes part of God's plan and is remembered forever in biblical history. The story begins in Bethlehem, a town in Judah. Ironically, Bethlehem means house of bread, yet at this time, the land was suffering from a severe famine. Because food was scarce, a man named Elimelech decided to leave Bethlehem with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and travel to the land of Moab in search of survival. Moab was a neighboring nation and often an enemy of Israel. The decision to leave Israel and settle in Moab was risky, but famine left the family with few options. What began as a temporary solution soon became a long stay. Tragedy struck the family when Elimelech died, leaving Naomi a widow in a foreign land. Despite her grief, Naomi remained with her sons, who later married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other named Ruth. For about 10 years, the family lived in Moab. But then another tragedy occurred. Both Mahlon and Chilion died. Naomi was left completely alone, no husband, no sons, and no security. Ruth and Orpah were also widows, facing uncertain futures in a society where women depended heavily on male relatives for survival. Naomi heard that the famine in Judah had ended and decided to return to Bethlehem. She urged her daughters-in-law to remain in Moab, remarry, and build new lives. Naomi believed she had nothing left to offer them. Orpah wept and eventually returned to her people. Ruth, however, made a decision that would change history. Ruth refused to leave Naomi. She declared her famous words of loyalty: "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." This was more than emotional attachment, it was a commitment to faith. Ruth chose Naomi, Israel, and the God of Israel, even though it meant poverty, rejection, and uncertainty. The 2 women returned to Bethlehem together. Naomi, filled with grief, told the people to call her Mara, meaning bitter, believing God had dealt harshly with her. Yet even in her bitterness, God was already working through Ruth. Upon arriving in Bethlehem, Ruth and Naomi were very poor. To survive, Ruth took advantage of an Israelite law that allowed the poor to gather leftover grain from harvested fields. Ruth went out to work and happened to gather grain in the field of a man named Boaz, a wealthy and respected relative of Elimelech. Although it seemed like chance, this meeting was part of God's plan. Boaz noticed Ruth and asked about her. When he learned who she was and heard about her loyalty to Naomi, he was deeply impressed. Boaz showed kindness by allowing Ruth to gather freely, protecting her from harm, giving her extra grain, speaking to her with dignity. Ruth responded with humility, asking why she deserved such kindness as a foreigner. Boaz praised her faithfulness and prayed that God would reward her. Ruth returned home with abundant food, and Naomi immediately recognized Boaz as a kinsman redeemer, a close relative who could legally help their family by providing protection and restoring land or marriage. Hope began to rise again. Naomi, seeing Boaz's kindness, decided to help Ruth secure a future. She instructed Ruth to approach Boaz in a respectful and culturally appropriate way, signaling her willingness to be redeemed. Ruth followed Naomi's instructions carefully, showing courage and obedience. When Ruth approached Boaz, she asked him to fulfill his role as redeemer. Boaz responded honorably. He praised Ruth again for her character, noting that she did not pursue younger or wealthier men. However, Boaz explained that there was another relative closer than him who had the first right to redeem Ruth. Boaz promised to settle the matter properly, demonstrating integrity and respect for the law. Boaz met with the elders of the town and presented the matter to the closer relative. When the man learned that redeeming the land also meant marrying Ruth, he declined. Boaz then legally took responsibility as redeemer and married Ruth. God blessed their marriage, and Ruth gave birth to a son named Obed. Naomi, once bitter and empty, was filled with joy. The women of Bethlehem praised God, saying Naomi now had new life and hope. Obed became the father of Jesse, who became the father of King David. Through Ruth, a foreign widow, God established the royal line of Israel and, eventually, the lineage of Jesus Christ.